Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Patrice. Hi, Maxine. Welcome.
Hello,
Welcome.
hello. How are you doing, Del? Nice to
Good.
see you.
Nice to see you too. Good morning and welcome. Good morning to everyone joining us. I want to welcome every single person who's on social media, who is connecting to us via Facebook. If you're connecting to us on YouTube, if you're connecting to us on LinkedIn, I want to welcome you to the final day of Conversations on Migration, the Climate Justice series. I'm joined by three, well, I say three, like I'm adding myself into it, but they're two lovely individuals, which I'll introduce in just a second. You will get to know a little bit more about them in just a little bit. But we also have three wonderful panelists who will be joining, and I am so interested to hear this conversation today. I think the last 3 days have been a game changer because we see how persistent youth activists are across the Caribbean in terms of getting climate justice. And as we know, the Caribbean countries continue to contribute less than 1% to global greenhouse gas emissions, which essentially are the root of the changes we see taking place in climate trends. Yet, Caribbean countries are still highly exposed to the increasing adverse effects of climate change and associated with environmental degradation, including rising sea levels, more frequent and intense hurricanes and storms, and changing weather patterns. Individuals living in small island developing states are 3 times more likely to be displaced due to environmental disasters than individuals living elsewhere. And this is striking. My name is JL Joseph, and I am happy to be part of this climate justice series. Like I said, if you're just coming on, this is day 4. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host today, who will be Patrice Escada is my co-host. And Maxine is joining us as well. So a little bit about Patrice. Patrice serves as the Chief of Missions Barbados and is also the coordinator for IOM Caribbean. And Maxine, like you may have met her yesterday. If you were connected yesterday, if you're tuning in today, Maxine is the communications officer for IOM Caribbean. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, Patrice. Patrice, you're not saying anything? You're quiet?
I'm super quiet, but I'm really excited to be here. I've been able to listen late at night to the three other ones, and I must say the quality of the discussion is fantastic. The messaging that we are hearing is extremely powerful. The emotions that are there is fantastic. So really looking forward to today's discussion. A bit sad that it's already the last one, but
It is
let's enjoy
the
it.
final. It is the final, right? And I'll leave Maxine. Take Maxine. Maxine, you can take the lead from here in
Sure.
terms of introducing the panelists, and then we'll come back to the discussion.
Yep. Well, thanks, Jill, and thanks to everyone who's logged in, who has been following us for the past 4 days. This is the final day, and we are really looking forward to it. Today with us, we have three more youth advocates from across the Caribbean. I'm going to start from top of screen. So we have Saint Luc Leblanc, who is Dominican, living in Montserrat, migrated after Hurricane Maria. So he's a climate migrant himself, labor migrant as well, because he went up there as part of the police cohort. So he is has become very involved in the society and the environment advocacy in Montserrat. He reactivated the National Youth Parliament, and he began, I think, as youth minister of agriculture. He's now the youth premier, minister of finance and economic development. He's studying for political science at UE Global Campus. He is also the SDG 7 focal point for small island development states. And he also works part time as an environmental monitor for a construction company that is undertaking port development in Montserrat. and he volunteers with forestry. St. Luke is involved in all sorts of aspects, and he's a perfect example of a migrant who is contributing very much to the society where he now lives. So thank you, St. Luke, for being with us. He's also going to be at COP29, sent by IOM headquarters. So really looking forward to that. Next up, I have Christine Samaru, who is from Guyana, but joining us all the way from Tanzania, where she is in the middle of her advocacy work and building her own capacity. Christine is an intersectional feminist. She's very much involved in work to do with gender and environmental justice. She's a gender and environmental justice advocate, and always bringing in the connection between gender, environment, and human rights. And Christine has founded her own NGO, the Person Collective, which works in this same area. So, Christine, we thank you so much for being with us this morning as well. And then we have the youngest among us, Matai Samuel, who is representing Suriname and the Dutch Caribbean. Matai has been working as an advocate since the age of 6. He's been advocating for child rights, education, and heritage. Those are his areas of work and passion. He has been a CARICOM youth ambassador. He's only 19, but he has been a CARICOM youth ambassador. He works along with UNICEF. He works along with the government of Suriname. He has done work with IOM Suriname as well and other agencies. So very involved, and proof that you're never too young to contribute meaningfully to making this society a better place. So thank you to all of you for agreeing to be here, and I'm going to hand you right over to JL.
Thank you very much for this introduction. And I mean, guys, we have some really good people on the panel this morning, youth on the panel this morning, who are going to really talk to you about and share their views as it relates to how they're impacting or how we can impact climate justice. I want to get started with Christine because we know Christine is in Tanzania and we know that there's connectivity issues, and we really want her to get her message across as early as possible. So we're going to get started with Christine and bring her full frame into this. So in getting the conversation started, I just want to start by saying, Christine, you may not consider yourself as this, but by definition, you're a migrant and you're also a returnee. You moved to New York in 2008 to study there. You started your professional life, and then in 2018, you decided to move back to Guyana to follow your dreams of doing environmental work for in your country. You have many hats. Like Maxine just said, you've even co-authored a children's book on climate change and health called The Sprouts and the Mystery of the Flood. How would you say your migration experience has contributed to your advocacy for change and to building a sustainable economy that is fair and inclusive for all?
Thank you so much. I'm really appreciative to IOM for including me in this conversation. And throughout the week, I've been learning so much. So when I think of migration, migration has always been an integral part of my life story as an intersectional gender and environmental justice advocate. My ancestors were taken across the Kalipani, or the dark waters,
Oh, I think we may have lost Christine.
Uh,
And that was one of our, greatest. I saw the light flicker, and I'm like, ooh, I hope she's not losing power. I hope she's not losing power. But we will put her on hold for now, because we do understand, the internet is interneting. She's in a different country where there's connectivity issues. So we're gonna keep pushing, and we're gonna continue. And I'm gonna bring in Saint Luke. So Saint Luke, welcome to the discussion. And I will get to your question right now. So Montserrat has been facing the unpredictability of the Montserrat Soufriere Hills volcano, which became active again in 1995 and has continued to erupt ever since. In 1997, 19 people lost their lives. Thousands of people were displaced from the island, and living a population of only like 10.5 thousand. leaving the island scarce of people and causing severe trauma for Monstratians. Since then onward, migration has continued due to hurricanes and other climate impacts, among other reasons. In such contexts, what are some clear actions to help achieve resilience to these disasters?
Thank you, JL. Thank you, everyone, for having us. Just a point of correction. Right now, there are 4,000 persons on the island, and to enhance resilience to disasters in Montserrat, particularly in the context of volcanic activities and climate impact issues, several clear actions needs to be implemented. One being disaster preparedness and response planning. Let's develop the reg and regular. Let's develop and update a comprehensive disaster preparedness plan that includes evacuation routes, emergency plans, shelters, communication strategies, conduct regular drills with persons in the community and emergency response persons to ensure that the readiness is there. Secondly, community education and awareness. Knowledge is power. Implementing educational programs to inform the population about the risk of associated with volcanic eruptions and climate change issues. This include training on how to respond during emergencies, understanding warning signs, and promoting safety measures. Because honestly, there are a lot of persons to this day who doesn't understand the importance of climate change and the importance of what that volcano can do. Thirdly, infrastructure resilience. We need to invest in resilient infrastructures that can withstand volcanic eruptions and extreme weather events. These include strengthening our buildings, improving drainage system, and ensuring that critical facilities like our hospitals, our schools, etc., are built to withstand disasters. And my favorite, finally, is environmental management. The implementation of sustainable land use practices and reforestation efforts, such as the one that I conducted with the National Youth Parliament, where we planted 681 trees in 5 days in areas prone to landslides and erosion. Trees that can withstand volcanic activities like what we get on a regular basis, ash falls and heavy rain. Those are important. Protecting natural barriers such as our mangroves and coral reef can also help mitigate the impact of climate change. And by implementing these actions, Mosha can build a more resilient community capable of effectively responding to and recovering from challenges posed by volcanic activities and climate change. So this is my contribution to that question.
Thank you very much, St. Luke, for sharing that with us so passionately too. You sounded like you were in Parliament and you were speaking up, for the youth. That was very impressive. I'd like to bring Matai into the frame. I see Christine has been trying to connect, so hopefully we get through following Matai's contribution and we can have her share hers. So Matai, as we know, the Caribbean is home to 12.6 million children, according to UNICEF report back in 2019. Children and youth are among the most vulnerable groups to the impacts of climate change, such as drought, storms, and flooding. Research actually shows that children, adolescents, and youth will be uniquely impacted by climate change in the coming years. For instance, a child born in 2020 will face twice the risk of experiencing wildfires, 2.6 times the risk of drought, 2.8 times the risk of river flooding, and 6.8 times the risk of heat waves compared to a person who was born in 1960. This makes it more likely that they will experience cross-border migration, internal displacement, or even relocation of entire communities due to climate impacts in their lifetime. How do you see climate justice in the Caribbean context, particularly as it relates to the needs of children and youth forced to be displaced?
Thank you, Ms. Joseph. First and foremost, climate action in the Caribbean is mainly about adaptation as opposed to mitigation. Hurricanes are increasing in frequency and severity, saltwater intrusion, harsher droughts, and prolonged periods of flooding are diminishing agricultural yields, causing harvests to fail, and endangering food and water security across the Caribbean. So, climate justice within the Caribbean context would necessitate technological innovation, breeding more climate resilient crops, and an accelerated transition away from fossil fuels to green and blue economies. Instead, we're seeing that many Caribbean countries are heavily investing in fossil fuel industries, exclaiming that it's now our turn to exploit those natural reserves. On the topic of internal displacement and the relocation of entire communities, forced migration is often accompanied by a loss of community and cultural identity. So, in pursuing climate justice in the Caribbean, it is incumbent upon us to develop programs that focus on connections and cultural heritage, trying to preserve cultural identity as communities migrate. And the Caribbean is quite heavy on the response side. We have communal funds for hurricane relief, and if it is within our capacity to establish those communal funds for relief and aid, why can't we endeavor to design and implement regional policy? I know that many countries across the Caribbean are investing in cleaner energy and have hurricane programs in place, have other disaster programs in place, but we rarely share that data. There's way too little collaboration within a region that shares so many challenges. And if we share those challenges, the solutions must be common as well. I think that as we go towards climate justice within the Caribbean, we need to strengthen our education systems. We need to look towards integrating indigenous and tribal knowledge into education systems. We have this perception also within the Caribbean that Western is good, Western is better, but there's a lot of intrinsic knowledge that we've taken with us across the different regions, from the different regions where our people came from. And I think that resilience in a way is tied to the Caribbean identity. I think that we should communicate and engage young people and communicate with and engage young people more. Uh, uh, Talks and discussions like these are a step in the right direction, but we need to have them at a much more organic level as well. We need to venture out into communities, rural and interior areas, and in some cases the outer islands within the Caribbean, and start up those discussions on those islands in those communities as well.
Thank you very much for this, Matai. Matai is only 19, and you have big brain, like that's how we call it in Dominica, big brain. We lost Christine while she was about to answer her question, and just to kind of bring the question forward again, just for those of you who may have missed it, or just so she could get her thoughts going again. We know we do understand your situation, Christine, so we're here with you. And I just want to bring your question up again, and it's, how would you say your migration experience has contributed to your advocacy for change and to building a sustainable economy that is fair and inclusive for all?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And just so sorry about my Wi-Fi and the noise, but I would say migration has always been an integral part of my life story as an intersectional gender and environmental justice advocate. My ancestors were taken across the Kalipani or the Black Waters as indentured servants from India to Guyana, and even my late grandmother escaped domestic violence, and she lived in Venezuela for a number of years. In 2018, as you mentioned earlier, I migrated to live with my dad in the United States. It was a really difficult decision to move as a teenager, leaving everything I love, everyone I know back in Guyana. But I knew, and my family knew, that this was an opportunity to study in the US. And it was necessary for me to be able to use that wisdom one day and come back to Guyana. When I'm back in Guyana, I learned a lot about environmental movements and environmental justice in the United States and around the world. And I was really privileged to learn about organizing strategies and to work on the ground with various environmental justice organizations in the Bronx, advocating for clean water, clean air. And I was really inspired by the work that I do right now with my NGO. Was really inspired by the work that I did in New York specifically. Living among different people was also really inspiring because you learned about their history and their struggle. And for me, realizing how our history, especially as colonized people, we're so very, very similar. And so we struggle together. And so I believe when much is given, much is expected. And by receiving an education, it was necessary for me to come back and to work in Guyana. In Guyana, we have a really high migration rate. This country fuels my inspiration. There are many, many challenges, but there are solutions by the people that live here. And I'm really grateful that I was able to live abroad. And I'm really satisfied every day that I'm able to work with diverse community to connect environmental issues to gender, migration, housing, and overall human rights.
Thank you very much, Christine. I'd like to bring in Patrice. Patrice to the fold. Patrice, I don't know if you have any words for based on what you've just heard, and also I know you have a question that you'd like to pose to all of the panelists here today.
Thanks, Dale. I do have many words, but I want to hear from them, so I will keep them very short. I'd like two reactions from you guys, and remember, I'm coming from outside. I discovered the first time I traveled, I studied in Canada that I was European. When I was living in Europe, in France, no one ever told me I was European. And I feel the same sometimes in the Caribbean. We're talking about the Caribbean, but in reality, it's a reality of different countries with extremely rich cultures and identity. And one of the points that Saint Luc and Matei you were making is about knowledge as being power, about disaster preparedness plan, knowledge, indigenous knowledge included, and how there is not necessarily this knowledge that is transferred at a more regional level. So that's something that could benefit all the Caribbean countries. And for me, that's one of the questions I've been worrying when we talk about climate justice, climate advocacy, is that's what level of integration you would need among Caribbean countries to be able to amplify your voice as talking about your country experience, but to bring that within the COP20 discussion as something like the voice of the Caribbean. What are some of the barriers that you see to that level of integration that could help amplify some of the messaging? So that's my first one. My second one was more for Christine, but I see that she disappeared again. But I will still put it there in
You
case
can
she
put it on.
comes
You can
back.
put it on pause.
Yeah. It's she has also a very interesting experience because she came back, but we know that for many Caribbean who leave the Caribbean to go to the US, to Canada, to other places, um, what makes the difference between someone that is committed to come back and bring back the knowledge versus those that might sit on the fence or might not be so interested in coming back? What do you think makes the difference? I think that's for me a very important question, especially when it comes to climate adaptation that requires skills, that require knowledge that can be gained across the world. So those were my two questions, reflections. Over to you, Jael.
I'm gonna bring Matai on first so he can answer your first question. So Matai, go ahead.
Well, if I'm allowed to start with the second question, I think what makes the difference would be appreciation. Many youth advocates and activists that I've spoken to have mentioned this feeling of being removed from the rest of society. We're quite often othered, and we're branded as insane, as very different in a bad way. We're not seen as the rest of society or the rest of the community because we advocate for different things. We're very passionate about things that usually are not part of the day-to-day of many people. So I think that what keeps an advocate going next to resources is support from a community, and many people that leave, and out migration is a big thing not only in Suriname but across the region. People going abroad to study and staying there and study and starting a new life, starting a new existence abroad, which is okay, but it's also a loss of potential for the Caribbean. We should be engaging the diaspora, the Caribbean diaspora abroad, about these challenges we're facing, and not just in the context of remittances, because that's how we like to think about diaspora, about them sending money. But there's a lot of knowledge that can be shared between the populations home and abroad. But I think that appreciation, acknowledgement of the efforts of advocates, that really makes a difference in not only coming back, but um, paying mind to what's happening back home. On the topic of collaboration and regional integration regarding efforts, we like to organize talk shops. So developmental partners organize conferences, and we'll have delegates from all the different countries and territories, and we'll take very pretty pictures, and there will be outcome documents that only focus on national action. So those delegates that you primed for three months to work on that collaborative effort, that same agenda, you'll have them go back to their own countries and their territories, and there'll be no more communication, no more collaboration between those young people that found one another against all odds. A big issue is funds. Usually, people have the idea that developmental partners have a stacked wallet, but they while they don't. But I think it's not always about money. It's about finding pathways, finding avenues, and I think that that comes down to providing young people, children and youth advocates with a sense of agency, not just because something that, and pardon me for saying this, but something that the United Nations is also guilty of often in many small island developing states and least developed countries is tokenizing youth, tokenizing children, and we like to identify poster children, but we don't listen. We have them speak. We place young people in the pulpit and present, but we don't actually understand what they're saying, what they're trying to get across. So what I appreciate you organizing these discussions and these talks with these young people, and I've been taking the time to listen to the other three episodes, and there are some genuine and genuinely valuable insights being shared, and I would love to see those distilled into programs that are rolled out across the region. But when you roll those out, don't just include the young people in the territories and in the countries in the implementation phase. Include young people in the when you're writing the proposals. Have them present when you're doing the project evaluation and the monitoring. Have young people present at all stages, and not convince young people. Convince us that you're listening. Make us understand that give not just control but agency. Young people, future young people are now. I would like to closing. I would like to echo something one said recently. There's the Caribbean, what is the Caribbean, and what is right with the Caribbean is its youth. So I pose it to you: listen to young people, embrace young people, and let young people lead.
Thank you very much, Matai. And I'll take it to now St. Luke to answer. I guess you could choose to answer both of Patrice's questions or whichever one you feel is pertaining to you and your advocacy specifically.
If I must say, based on the answer that I gave earlier on, this can be done holistically in the Caribbean. It's a multi-layered approach. However, we need to go to COP and to those big meetings with together, not every one of the Caribbean countries crying out for one specific thing to do for their island. We come together, and if it means that we are working towards getting two of these issues resolved, then we're working for that two in the first couple of years or whatever the case may be. For example, reducing inequalities. Let's identify and address the impact, of climate challenges on vulnerable people, such as the poor, women, children, the disabilities. Building resilience. It should be of priority and policy that when you're building, we build climate resilience infrastructure, including renewable energy, sustainable and smart agriculture, and climate smart water system, management system. Let's enhance our warning system and climate information services that support informed decision making and timely response to climate related issues. When it comes to financing, like Matthew just elaborated on, we need to mobilize climate financing from international sources, such as green climate funds, so that they can support resilience and adapt to efforts in the Caribbean. We're supposed to be working together. And the thing about human rights and leaving no one behind, we need to provide climate education and awareness programs that empowers individuals and communities to take action and demand their rights. As it should start at the primary school level and should be a topic that we should be having every day. And before I end, I just want to bring forward a quote that I kind of gathered last night, that I brought up on my own last night. And it says, disaster management resilience building for Montserrat and the Caribbean should be based on human rights, inequality reduction, and financial resilience. Working together will provide a pathway for a more equitable, resilient future, which no one and absolutely no one should be left behind. So again, go in there with one voice, go in there. If all of us want that, all of us going to get that, we're going to advocate for that, and not everyone fighting their own personal battles.
Thank you very much, St. Luke. Christine, I don't know if you caught the question, and you'd like to, if you want, I could get Patrice to repeat. But I feel like I have a sense that you
Yes.
understand where the direction is going. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more with my colleagues and everything and their passion for what they shared. And I definitely 100% agree with that. And to add on, I will say that it's important for us to continue to center marginalized voices. In the Caribbean, we have indigenous wisdom, ancestral wisdom that needs to be tapped into and to be remembered. We continue, like you said, JL, in the beginning, we continue to face the worst effects of the climate crisis. And we need commitments for loss and damages that we continue to suffer. Our solutions has to be pro-poor, and it has to center marginalized voices, persons who are in vulnerable positions. We have to have investment in local communities. Our voices aren't only needed when we're preparing for COP every year, but we need to be involved in programs, in projects, and these programs need to be intersectional. It has to work with people in the community who continue to face the worst effect of the climate crisis.
Thank you. I know one of the questions that Patrice also he positioned it sort of to you, but you dropped off right in that during that moment, had to do with understanding why people, because people oftentimes migrate, they go out and they come back, and there is often a reluctance for people to return, and in your case, you came back and kind of centering the conversation around, why it's important and what should be done in order to allow people to want to come back and contribute to things like advocacy where climate change is concerned, the environment and so forth. I hope I'm getting your summary
Yes,
right, Patrice. So
correct.
what can you contribute in terms of even your own experience? I know from my own experiences, and Maxine is smiling because she knows this is something that I've vocalized countless times. I've always gotten pushback, although I am very much involved in Dominica. I don't consider myself a diaspora. I've straddled both countries very comfortably. I probably know what's going on in Dominica even before Dominicans living in Dominica, because there are many times I will tell people, "Hey, do you know what happened?" They're like, "How do you know?" Because I'm very much connected to the veins of Dominica where that is concerned. And people often make me feel like I'm an outsider when I'm in Dominica. I feel like, oh, they don't want to take your suggestions. They feel like you have too much to say. Why you have so much to say? Or why are you even focusing on these things? We have bigger issues. Probably you could shed some light on that.
Yes, thank you so much. And that question really touches my heart because similarly, when I decided to move back to Guyana after 10 years of being in Dominica, way, it was met with so much pushback, especially from family members. And they mean well in terms of thinking about security and why would you give up this amazing opportunity to be in New York and live in Guyana. But for me, this work really touches my heart. It's activism is my life's work, and I really believe, and everything I say, I really live it. If we want to have Caribbean led solutions, we need people who understand the issues that we face. And growing up, I've always been aware of injustices. I've witnessed and I've been in the 2005 flooding in Guyana, and then even living in the United States, surviving Hurricane Sandy. We need people who care to do this work because it's easy to do this work and not do it well. But if we're going to be intentional about it, we need people who are really committed. So even when I decided to come back to Guyana, being a young person returning, like you said, it wasn't met with acceptance. I had to prove myself. And now 6 years in, I'm really excited and really proud of myself to make that decision. When I decided to move back, I decided that I needed to learn from the people. As much as I was coming in with a degree and experience in the United States, it was very different in Guyana. So I decided to work with the people, work in the Environmental Protection Agency, and really understand the communities, understand the people, understand the work that is already being done. And working with other NGOs like WWF, I'm able to now have a better understanding of Guyana, understanding of the needs. And despite living here 6 years, I'm really cautious of my privilege. And so I'm still in debt to my communities when I'm serving them. Sometimes I don't always know the issues they're facing, but I'm always humbling myself and being open to relearning and understanding the issues that people are facing. And the way I go about my work is about centering marginalized voices always. So as much as I'm advocating and sharing my platform and I might want to work in a particular area, it's important for me to center the people that are facing those issues first and foremost.
Thank you very much, Christine, for that. Patrice, back to you.
Thanks. I think we're a bit beyond time, but it was fascinating discussion. So really, thanks for you to share also in a format like that, things that are also very personal, because that's where we can really relate as human being. So really, thanks for that. Couple of takeaway from my side, and that's not an exhaustive list. First, one of related to the one voice for the Caribbean, but also the sense of belonging to a community of activists. I feel that there could be a role for organization like us if we were doing that better to help you build those communities, but make sure that these communities are yours. They don't belong to us, but we give you the means to make them work for you. Because I think that the point you're mentioning of finding people that are like-minded, that can help you support each other's while you are trying to have difficult conversation in your countries that are not necessarily well accepted, where there are cultural barriers, when there is all of that. I think that can also really help you get like the boost of energy that might be needed sometimes, doing things that are not easy to do. So for me, that's clearly one takeaway on that. And I think that can also help St. Luc, for instance, to help craft messaging for COP29 when some of you have the chance to speak in this type of forum, because whatever we think of them, that's where some of those decisions are made, and it's important to have the voice heard there. I feel also the point on tokenization. I think that's really a tendency that all our organizations have, and I think that's an extremely fair point. In particular, how you describe the way there needs to be inclusion in all phases of project development. I think for me, that's something also we need to reflect on our side. I'd like to make a commitment that that's the way we want to operate. We're going to have to learn. I think there are a lot of good experience worldwide on that, but I think we need to learn a bit more and really be in the listening mode. Our role is often to mediate also between what we want to do in the field and what the person or the entity that gives the funding wants to do as well. And there is also a bit of this mediating things that needs to happen. And I'm worried that sometimes we tend to lean too much towards where the money comes from rather than where the money has to go to make a difference and an impact. So that's also for me an important point to take. And the last one, and again, it's not exhaustive, but it's really about transcending the national level, which I think came back from some of your discussions. For us in the International Organization for Migration, where we work on migration issues, which by definitions are cross-border issues, they are not national issues, we're extremely sensitive to that. And that's also why we are so keen on discussions on diaspora engagement, what is called diaspora engagement. It's to see how there could be meaningful contributions that are also accepted. It means that we really need to look at issues of mobility, especially in relation to climate change, beyond the national lens, because this is in a way too narrow to capture the dynamic of migration, to capture what might be some needs of countries that need to adapt and that might need skills that do not exist, or how at the same time you tap into the skills that do exist, especially indigenous knowledge, and ensuring that basically you don't impose Western frame of solving issues in places where it's not going to be the best way to do it. So that will be my third lessons learned from that discussion. But again, you said much more than I can summarize, so I don't think I'm doing justice to you.
Thank you very much, Patrice. And I want to commend you on, your leadership style, the fact that you continuously empower your staff, and that's when I'll bring in Maxine. To do conversations like this, to have conversations like this. Conversations on migration this is not a one-time thing. We've been doing this, I believe, for since last year, right, Maxine? So I want to commend you, on your leadership qualities, and even understanding. I know you don't like the term, but coming from a European um, mindset, and coming from Europe and coming in, I mean, people could look at you as so many different things. The white man coming in and trying to disrupt, or the colonizer. They might use all different frames, to look at you. But you, based on my experience, I can say that I see you empowering a lot, and really wanting to know what do we need to do, and not just saying it, but also putting it into practice. So good job to you. I want to bring in Maxine, Maxine, because Maxine has been the one really steering the ship, for this conversation is on migration, and this climate justice series. I'm always so surprised how quickly we can mobilize these conversations in less than 2 weeks. We're able to get panelists and everything, and put everything together. And I just want to also give you for really putting this together and recognizing what was necessary to make noise leading up to COP 29. I would like to leave you to have the final words before we close off.
Thank you, JL. So I just want to say teamwork makes the dream work, right? Yeah, it does. It really does. And so I really want to thank the three of you panelists, but also all the others. So we had 11 panelists in all, 11 guests in all, youth leading in different areas throughout the Caribbean. We did come late, and you guys were really flexible with us, and we really appreciate it. But your messages have been so powerful and so passionate. We will be amplifying these messages over and over again. And definitely some of the suggestions that came out today in terms of, involvement, nothing about us without us, which is a message that comes from people with disabilities, but also in general from minority communities and marginalized communities. And so I'm happy to hear Patrice say it'll be definitely a different way of doing things. But we have been intent on listening, and this is what conversations on migration in the Caribbean has been about from day one. This is the ninth episode, and we're already planning the 10th, which will be maybe on the 4th of December. That's what we're looking at. And just to thank all of you who have tuned in, JLU for being such an excellent host and for working along with us on the imaging and everything. Patrice, you for being behind this and being really excited about it as well. And yeah,
Helen, let's not forget Helen.
Helen, the project manager, yes, for also being a bumblebee of fire behind all of this. And yeah, we are one Caribbean. We are defined by migration in so many different ways, from our origins throughout our existence. And I think that is one of the messages that we really want to leave over and over again, is that, guys, it's not about us and them. We are all migrants. Every one of us as Caribbean people, if we look into our lineage, our heritage, our backgrounds, we will see that there has been some kind of movement somewhere along the line. Even the indigenous people moved, and that has been their tradition and their way of life has been movement, right? So let's stop making differences and segregating our communities based on the things that are unique to different individuals, and let us try to collaborate and move together as one Caribbean. Thank
Definitely.
you.
Definitely. And my final words, I just want to reiterate the importance of those of you who come on here at any given time, whether it's before, during the show, whether you caught it after and you came back and you're listening, whether you've been following the entire series. I want to encourage you to share. I encourage you to tag your political leaders. I want to encourage you to tag your governments in all of the conversations that have, especially those that have happened over the last couple of days, because a lot of those leaders will be the ones going to COP29, and that is information for them. That is food for thought. That is things that they could bring to the forefront, understanding the importance of why the youth needs to be involved in these conversations. I love what Matai said in terms of it's not just asking the questions and asking us to implement it, but in terms of making us be involved in the policies and making us be involved in everything that pertains to it, as so that at the end of the day we get a resolute that everybody can benefit from, so that no one is left behind. Just sign that in, right? I want to say thank you to all of the panelists who came on over the last couple of days. Thank you for your time, thank you for your expertise, thank you for your knowledge, thank you for being solutions driven, and thank you to the organization, the IOM Caribbean, for really putting this platform together so that we can all learn from, so that we can all grow from, so that we can all help each other, achieve a more sustainable Caribbean. Thank you again for the opportunity. And I want to say goodbye to all and look out, like Maxine said, for the next conversations coming up in December. Don't forget to follow the IOM Caribbean, follow on Facebook. Click Facebook. You can go on YouTube and look at the videos. And it's all of the videos are there for your own consumption. Until next time, guys. Bye bye. Bye to all.
Bye.